Awesome.
All
Good
right.
morning. Hello, Candy. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank
Awesome.
you.
You're
So
welcome.
today, why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
Some good stuff to get to know more about your work, more about you as a social worker,
Hmm.
and hopefully we can learn something from you as well as you are a seasoned social worker.
Absolutely.
To just get started, the very infamous question, what brought you to social work world?
That's such a loaded question. And I hate to sound cliche, but social work certainly found me. I actually worked for many years. I was not a social worker. And then what happened was I kept hearing, oh my goodness, you're such a social worker. You should consider, entering the profession. And I had the dean of the School of Social Welfare at the University at Albany was very persistent, very persistent. And she's like, come on, you got to do it. You got to do it. So I decided to go back and get my degree, my MSW from the School of Social Welfare at Albany. And then worked there, right, for a number of years in that program. Because even though I'd worked there, I'd worked in a separate area. So it literally found me, and I am so grateful. It's changed my life in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to maybe sharing a little bit more about that. But that's how I found social work.
Wow,
Hmm.
wonderful. Now I'm very intrigued to know that what was that point at that workplace, that your very first workplace related to
Hmm.
social work field? What was that moment for you? Like, oh my God, this is it for me.
I think I would venture to say a lot of people go into social work because they really have a genuine desire to make changes. Either personally, things have happened for them, or just, what they see around them. They really want to make a change. And so for me, it's no different. It was like, oh my goodness, like this is a profession where we actually get to do just that. But more so because I had worked for many years with youth and I saw, just the impact of poverty and certain environments. And I knew from my own experience, I grew up in the Bronx when I was younger, and then we relocated upstate to Albany. I knew from my own experience what just one person who cared, the difference, the impact, and so that for me was it just was it. And then when I started to realize that, like, in helping others, you heal, you help, you right, like it's that reflection back. That I was beyond all in after that, right? And it wasn't about being selfish. It was just like, wow, like I get to do this and get this added benefit and be better, you know what I mean? And be able to kind of shine a light. That for me is very important because people shined a light on me growing up and they helped me tremendously and they mentored me and guided me and loved me and all the things. And so I felt that was very important. And that for me is who we are as social workers.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I resonate with you so much. And it's
Hmm.
just beautiful to see that being able to give back in the community from the community that we got growing up. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's the beauty of our work. I love
Hmm.
that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's
Yeah,
so
no problem.
important.
Absolutely. I mean, and for me, this is just my humble opinion, but for me, if you're not in it, for even a fraction of the reasons that I just mentioned, don't do something else because this is not right. We need people who really understand the mission and are willing to do what's necessary, right? All the things. You don't have to believe all the things that everyone believes, but that baseline, I'm here to support, guide, advocate, all the things, right? That ethical piece. If that's not you, no problem. Just find something else. Right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
I hear you. And on that very note, I'm very curious that what keeps you motivated to stay in your field? Like, what do you think that your
Yeah.
one thing or maybe many things that keeps you going?
Yeah. Well, I've always been motivated by cycle breaking, by change, always. I mean, even when I wasn't a social worker, right? So whenever I'm able to have any kind of impact in that way, it's motivating. And now, right, like I do a mix of both now because I have a private practice. that I, operate with other colleagues who are social workers and a psychologist who's amazing, who's also a social worker. So that's great, right? But in my day job, I work at the Office of Children and Family Services, and so the whole premise of what we do is, advocating and supportive and all the things, right? So for me, having a seat at the table and being able to have an impact on maybe some policies that might shift some of the practices, right? Some of the harmful practices, frankly, makes for me is a motivating factor, right? When I understand, okay, this is what's been happening. Well, I get to be here and I get to talk about how, some of the things that have been done are not good practice. And that's very important, right? It's very important. No matter what you do as a social worker, we bring that lens. We know what that is, and so what's really exciting is that what I'm doing actually in my day job is building a bureau that's dedicated to social determinants of health and eradicating the negative impacts when folks don't have access to, quality education, don't have access to health care, don't have, right? Like all the things that social determinants encompass. And so, hello, like pinch me. Who gets to do that? I get to actually be a part of a solution oriented, approach. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I'm really grateful for that.
Wow. Sounds
Mhm.
like you have kind of best of both worlds in terms of
Yes,
you get to do macro, but also you get to do micro. That's the beauty
exactly.
of social work, that there's so
Yes.
many things that we can do.
Options.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Hmm.
Okay. So how does the social work field look for you now? Can you talk about the social work journey? How did you evolve?
Oh,
That's a loaded
absolutely.
question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as far as evolvement, I think, initially it's kind of this pie in the sky, right? At least for me, utopian, oh, we're going to change the world just by being here. We're social workers, right? And then you realize very quickly, no, that's not going to happen. You have to be very intentional. And in addition to, kind of setting the path for yourself or taking advantage of whatever opportunities, it's also vitally important to take care of yourself because but compassion fatigue is real, burnout is real, and so it's really important to figure out how to marry, the passion for whatever it needs to happen with ensuring that you're taking good care of yourself. So that for me is kind of front and center. But the other part of that, and of course, the thought just went out of my mind. I had a great thought and it went out of my mind. Remind me of your question.
How did you evolve
Oh,
in
evolve,
social work?
right.
Yes.
And so the other part of that is just recognizing that you don't have to do everything by alone, right? Like, there's a whole world out there. And so we all get to do what we do, right? And so for me, I might not be out, at the governor's office every week, right? However, I've found my lane and I've learned how to make the most out of the lane that I'm in, right? And I think it's really important for people to understand that. You don't need to compare yourself to what other people are doing. Just take full advantage of whatever opportunities you have. So initially in my career, I had the opportunity to work with youth. That's kind of been a thread throughout, but you know, take advantage of how to be impactful, right? How to make a difference for them. And then my first like job out of school, right? Even though I was a little bit older and I was, a returning student, was in administration, right? School of Social Welfare, University of Albany, I've mentioned that, where I was an assistant dean, right? And so in that capacity, I had the opportunity to really make a difference for the students coming through the program, right? So that's a whole different thing, right? Supervising students, working, being part of the decision-making process for curriculum, all of that stuff, vitally important, right? And so but that's very different than the day-to-day things I did, working with youth. And then fast forward, right, to even higher ed administration, where I worked at SUNY Systems, and I did some stuff in the governor, for in the governor's a program that the governor's office created. All very different, but intentionality the same, right? So I evolved through different opportunities, but remain consistent with, my understanding of what my contributions and assignments it was, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel it's a long answer, but I think that that question's so loaded and there's so many different ways, to approach it. So I figure let me try to hit it from a few different angles.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see the work you have been doing with youth, and
Oh
youth
yeah.
is the future. It's the future of our
That's it.
country. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed,
Yeah.
and the proudest opportunity that I had was working with youth. It was a program called Liberty Partnerships Program
Oh,
that was run out of the University at Albany, eventually then at the School of Social Welfare, which it still is today. And even though that was, geez, maybe 10 years ago now, something like that, I still am in touch with people. I still have, opportunities to connect, with my former students who are all adults with their own children. I've even had students' children in groups that I've done. So it's really important. And I just feel really blessed and lucky, to be able to have had such a role that is again is vitally important. And it just one person. We didn't have just one. We had a team of people who cared and who did the things that were needed. But once I realized that, I'm like, there's no stopping us.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really a blessing. It really is for me, for me. Yeah.
Is the impact that you're making or you
That's
made
it.
on them, Candy,
Right.
that they are still
Yeah.
in touch with you. It's
Yes.
just like so heartfelt. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's amazing for me to see how, we were able to influence someone else breaking a particular cycle or getting, education that provided them meaningful employment. Or when I talk about the social determinants of health, all the ways that, and at the time I didn't even have the language for that, right? But all the ways that you realize, wow, you made a difference and help somebody else to make a difference. And those students doing those things change the whole trajectory of their family, right? Their children's experiences. That's how you change the world. That's how you do it, right? One person at a time, one person at a time. Policies, of course, right? But individually, right? That has a huge impact too.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Wow,
Hmm.
wonderful. And
Hmm.
I was really thinking about that. How can social workers really support our youth to,
Mm.
empower themselves? Like, because this system is very complicated to navigate
Yes,
through, and especially
it
if you're
should.
coming from a BIPOC community, we all know
Yes. Oh
that.
my. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you like tell like social workers who are just incoming in the field or who are still existing in the field? What can those social workers do for these youth?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to establish meaningful connections. That is vital. Young people are smart. And guess what? They know when people are for them or not.
Yes.
It's that
Yeah.
simple. It's that simple. Our success was not that we were the most brilliant people. It was that we actually cared and that we actually wanted to make connections with people, right? With young people and show them by example, model for them what's possible, right? We often use our own experiences, happy to share about, living in poverty. My dad was in addicted, right? All the things. Happy to share that, right? But I had my mom, I had other, so helping students to connect to, who they can get what they need from. But I think that's the first thing. So let's start by you just kind of checking in with yourself, being real and showing up authentically. That's A. And then B, figure out all the resources, right? All the things that you can do. I mean, as social workers, we're trained to do that, right? So what are the things, what are the issues? Listen to them. They
Mhm.
know their lives, right? Don't go
Yeah.
and talking to them, talking at them. I know what's best for you. No, no, no. It's your life. You get to decide, even young, right? How can you inform me of how I can best, service you? and then help them to connect to the resources. And for me, what was very important, and I think what really helped the students we worked with, is that we didn't do it for them. We showed them, we provided them, right, the path, so, okay, here's this. And not just like the go to school and do good, get good grades. Yeah, okay. But if they don't have food, if they don't have coats, if they don't have, right, they need all those baseline things, right? So how do we make sure that they have what they need so that they can get, kind of a good opportunity to get in there and do, whatever it is that they want to do. And then also exposure is really important, especially for young people who don't have exposure. So we really made it a point to, fight to do things that our funders were like, what? You want to take them, roller skating? Yes, because it makes a difference, right? Like, you want to take them out of state to, a Black, campus? Yes, because I need them to see themselves reflected around them. And so, yeah, we fought really hard, but we made things happen, and it's worth it because, a lot of our students ended up going to some of those, all Black schools. And it was just, it's phenomenal to see that, to know that, like, the sacrifice is worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful.
Mhm.
Wonderful. And, it makes me think that I know that you are part of like two different worlds, right? Also say macro and micro. And
Right.
it really do make me wonder, has there been any moment where the system was so challenging for you that you couldn't show up for that youth that we know, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, you heard me allude to fighting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, little things like food, little things like things that seem obvious,
Yeah.
right? Like transportation, how a student's gonna get help if they can't get to us, right? Like that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a battle the entire time. I will just say that. And part of that is, my program was located on on the University of Albany's campus. And so you could imagine that we were not always, wanted on the campus. I mean, we were tolerated on the campus, but you have all these, students coming in, right, from different schools locally. Trust me, it was a battle, for the most part. Thankfully, school social welfare supported us, and many people supported us, right? But there were folks who did not. And so we had to really go up against, some big monumental walls, and kind of figure out how to break those walls down and have, and as I mentioned, that the program still exists. So, we ultimately we prevailed, but lots of blood, sweat, and tears, trust me. And again, what you realize is it's about the youth, though. It's about, right? It's worth it. I get to go home in my comfortable bed and my comfortable home. That's not everyone's experience. So it's okay. I can do it. I can do whatever's necessary. Myself, the team, to make sure that we're present for them in whatever way they need us to be present for,
Right.
So yeah. So everything's a battle, right? I mean, especially the things that are worth fighting for.
Mhm.
But you just make it clear, okay, this is what it is. This is why we're doing this. And even in the work that I'm doing now, even though it's macro oriented, I'm still approaching it from the same lens, right? Why, the who, right? And then maybe contrary to how policies get made, let's set our intention. Let's create a manifesto of sorts, right? Like, this is what we are going to do. What are we committed to? And then shop that with the leadership to ensure that they got our back, right? And then figure out how to get through the bureaucracy to make it happen. Because that's really what it's about. How do I, kind of bob and weave, as for boxers out there, right? To figure out how, because it can be done. It's just we may have to take a little bit, we might have to pivot a few times, but once you realize, and it might take a while, nothing happens overnight. But it's worth it, right? That endurance. And that's again why you need to take care of yourself, because sometimes you're going to be in it for a long time and you need to be able to have the stamina, right?
Right.
So that's definitely something to consider. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, like as you have came this far in your
Mm-hmm.
social work field,
Mm-hmm.
kudos to you.
Thank you.
I was wondering that how are those fights and battles looking like for you now? Have they like become any easier or they have become more complicated?
Well, I mean, both, right? Because the more you get into government and all of that, again, the bureaucracy, the more complicated it gets. It's just a lot more loops and ropes, like mountains to climb. There's just more to happen. But the more confident you get, the more you understand that. Don't personalize it, right? And align with those individuals who are like-minded, who have a similar, right? Like, we're going to work this through. And so I'm grateful that the team here not having it, right? I mean, all the things that we need to happen are in progress. And people are really, really committed, and that's what makes the difference, right? And I'll be honest, when I was in environments where the writing was on the wall, like it's not going to change, or it's going to get worse, then I found it was my responsibility to pivot and use my energy in a way that it could be more impactful, right? And I think that's something that can be a difficult conversation for social workers. Is like, but I want to remain and I want to fight through this. Yeah, but sometimes just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And you have to really be thoughtful about how you're using your energy. You don't want to burn out. And there's always generally going to be somebody who, may be willing to take that on, who might be able to handle it differently, right?
Right.
Yep. Nope. Nope. Again, it's back to that find your own lane,
Mhm.
get to it, right? There's always going to be something you're dealing with, but you get to decide, what it is that you're going to deal with or not. And some systems just are to the point where it's just, it's just difficult, right? And so how do you figure out how you want to move. But for me, I was like, I'd rather get away from administrative, higher ed, because generally, students at that point can kind of fend for themselves and figure it out. Whereas for me at this stage in my career, I like the idea that I get to, advocate for younger people, right? And in a different way, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just really dependent on the individual, I think. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So what part of social work you want to keep working on, and what does the future look like in your social work journey?
That's a good question. So, um, the future in my social work journey is definitely, you know, learning more in my what I call my day job, right? Doing as much as possible, advocating, making whatever shifts, right? Like all the things that we're here to do. In my personal social work journey and my private practice, it's, building that and, getting to a point where eventually when I do retire from my day job, right, I'm able to still, maintain. And my ultimate goal is to be in a position where I'm able to continue to guide budding social workers who are kind of newer to the field. That's my love, and that's something that I definitely want to continue. And I think that, I'll be like beautifully positioned, to do that, um, in some years to come. Because right, personally, I want to I'm working currently on getting my C, right? So I'm an L, not a C. I'm working to get to the C. So even for me, who's been around for a while, I still have goals. I still have dreams. Like, okay, I'm going to get to this point, be able to do my own thing, and then really work to supervise and help others get on their journey. So that's my ultimate goal. And for right now, I'm just want to again continue to learn everything I can learn and be just whatever advocate, change agent that I can be in the work that I'm doing currently. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank
Beautiful. And
you.
I really wish you the best.
Thank you.
And I hope you succeed in
Thank you.
all of your plans that you have.
Yes.
And This is my favorite question, and you also
Mhm.
mentioned it about self-care, taking care of yourself.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
tell us more, enlighten us.
Yeah. So for me, self-care means setting really firm boundaries. It means that no is a complete sentence and that we should not feel bad about, having like choosing ourselves first. It means unlearning some of those really, you know, I can't even think of the word, but um, very unhealthy thoughts about as a one, someone who identifies as a woman, what my role is supposed to be and how I'm supposed to take care of everybody else, right? Mm. Yeah, no, I have to put the mask on myself first in order to do so for other people. It looks like massages, it looks like reading. I'm a nerd. I'm just a nerd. I've always been, and proudly. So I love to learn. I love to, listen. And if I can read something or listen to, to a podcast or something and just get information, like I love that. So for me, that's self-care too. Hang out, my family and, just do like, but have balance, right? That's really important. I'm still working on, eating better and, working at like that kind of stuff because I'm so busy. So I'm, there are things that, you struggle with a bit, and I'm no different. But I am, I'm on the path though, and I'm conscious of it. So for
Right.
me, it's about just whatever, just helps me to smile and, get some energy back because it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Would you say taking care of yourself, because it's kind of a power process in your social work journey, has
Hmm.
changed, has
Oh
evolved?
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Initially it was about talking about it, but not really doing the things.
Yeah.
Now it's about doing the things, and it's about being really clear why it's important. For anyone who maybe doesn't understand. I mean, not that you owe them anything, but I think it's an opportunity to model for people too, right? And to give permission that it's okay to not like show up for every event and not go, do the things that you just don't want to do, frankly. And I think with COVID too, that really helped to shift because I mean, we lost so many people and it just helped. And I know people say that, oh, it changes the way, but it really changed the way that I choose to kind of engage, and how I use my energy. Because to me, that's the most important thing. Somebody said in a meeting one time that just struck me. They said, I don't manage my time, I manage my energy. And for
Powerful.
me, right, when he said that, I was like, yes, yes, right? Because I can always get stuff done. I've always been a great person who's organized and, you know, good at that. But managing my energy wasn't always a strong suit for me. So now I've learned to kind of shift and manage my. So if I'm tired, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to acknowledge that and work that in. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so it's definitely changed. Yeah, and the other piece is I'm getting older. So I'm getting older. So certain things I'm not doing anymore. Right? When I was young and out there, yay, let's do everything, But now it's like it's okay. Somebody else will do that,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Beautiful. I love that.
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
that. So tell our audience that one book that's your absolute favorite and you would recommend it to anyone and for them
Did you
to
say book?
a book
Oh,
because you love
jeez.
reading.
I should be prepared for this. I did an interview recently and they asked the same question and I said, I wish I do because I would have a list for you. Oh, this is hard because there's so many books that I love. But okay, I will say this right now, today, my favorite book that I think was probably like what I gave out for like Christmas, to a lot of people is Michelle Obama's The Light. I think it's The Light We Carry, I believe is the title. And what I love about it is just her kind of like, that term like that auntie approach to life, right? Just not so much, it's not about politics, it's not about, right? It's about perseverance and getting beyond and being in really difficult situations and learning how to manage. It's just a practical guide to, all things living particularly for BIPOC communities. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I would say for right now, that's probably like, whoa, it's just a really nice, break from all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're asking about like social worky, I love Brene Brown's work. I love her work. And I'm always gonna like advocate, for Brene Brown, and her findings and whatnot. But there's so many like I it's hard for me to, to really say.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Thank you. I'll
You're
note
welcome.
it
Yeah.
down.
Yep.
So as we're getting closer to our interview, and this is definitely has to my favorite question of the interview, because me being a new social worker, I'm
Hmm.
very curious to know what advice would you give to new social workers in the field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, similar to what I've shared, pace yourself,
Yeah.
right? It's a marathon. It's not, right? Like really pace yourself. Know why you're here, know what works for you, what doesn't. Don't be afraid to set boundaries and limits, take care of yourself, again, all the things that, we've said, but most importantly, like find your why and then allow that to kind of carry you, especially when things get really hard, right? And the why may not always associate with what you're doing with work, right? But what is your personal motivation? That's really, really important, and find your peeps, your team, the folks that you could really like just bear it all out with, as you need to, have balance. And most importantly, just really stay true to again, your why. Stay true to that because it gets really easy to kind of, step away from that. And that's what I think causes people's challenges,
Mhm.
So that would be my just regular, practical, everyday advice,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
Mm.
And I know I said it's going to be the last question, but
It's
that
okay.
you made that statement, and I'm
Mhm.
very curious to know, you had your why, right?
Mhm.
As you shared with
Yes.
us. And I kind of
Mhm.
wonder sometimes knowing what your why is clashed with the system while being at work, where you were having a difficulty to find that
Mhm.
connection. How do I
Mhm.
motivate myself? And what did you do
Yeah, it's
in
a
that
good
moment?
question. Well, I did a lot of thinking first off. Why like this is not in alignment and very clear. It's not in alignment
Yeah.
with my why. And what am I going to do about that? Because the other thing that we haven't talked about in this conversation is the conundrum of the money, like social workers and salaries.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, folks are coming out of school. You have, loans that have to be paid off, responsibilities, and some of the jobs that really, really align with our why don't pay very well. Let's be
Yeah.
honest, right? And so part of the challenge with that for me was that I was finding the salary that I felt, was more appropriate in some of the opportunities that were not in alignment. And so I had to really, really kind of step back a little bit. And to that point, I took almost a year off. It was like maybe 8 months off last year
Mhm.
right after COVID finished. I was just very overwhelmed. I had, found out that I had some stuff happening in my body and I needed to take a break. And I realized that the money wasn't everything. And so I decided to take that step back, regroup, get reconnected to my why. And then I was adamant. And this is the other advice I would give: fear doesn't lead, fear can't lead. You have to know that what's for you is for you. And when you are authentically aligned with your purpose, the opportunity will show up and everything will align, right? And I'm proof of that, right? And so part of that was making my own opportunity by, you know, stepping out on faith and out on beyond fear and doing the practice. But the other part of that was this position that I'm in right now, right? Showed up.
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily apply for it initially. I heard about it because people were like, this would be perfect for you, right? And then I had to do the research and make sure, because I didn't want to just take another thing,
Mm.
right? And when I saw, I thought, oh my goodness, that this really is, it is possible, and so nothing's ever perfect in any environment that but you pick and choose your battles and you keep it moving, right, for the greater, purpose. But I'm proof positive that if you set that intention and you're willing to honor it, you don't have to compromise. You
Yeah.
don't. You don't. You know. And also because I have a certain amount of experience and stuff now too, that puts me right in a slightly different, right. When you're new to the field, there are certain things that you kind of have to maybe do, right, just to kind of get yourself. But that experience will certainly pay off. But even with that, you don't have to take abuse and you don't have to be, wearing yourself out. You can figure out again that balance, right? And when organizations, companies, agencies, whatever, don't value you, mm, yeah, not good, not
Yeah.
good. So that, hate to end on that kind of note, but that's the reality of it,
Mhm.
and so just know that you're worth it
Yeah.
and you will get what you
Yeah.
ultimately deserve, right?
Yeah.
It'll come. It'll come. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll come. Yeah.
Thank you, Candy. Like, I really love how throughout our conversation, your answers were so realistic and practical, but also at the same time with really good intentions, very well
Mhm.
thought.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was beautiful having a conversation with you. And
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for all of your intentional
Yes.
answers. And yeah, I really hope whoever is listening to you right now, feeling
Mhm.
empowered in their field
Yes.
and knowing their
Yes.
why and keep going on.
That's right. That's right. And I invite you to reach out anytime. Don't be a stranger if I could be supportive in any way. I think mentoring and just being present, right? As a now I guess I'm considered an OG in the field, which is weird to say, but
The goat.
reality, right? Which is, I I'm happy to be present, right? I think it's really important. I
Yeah.
really do. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.